Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Good morning, Ms. Latha, and thank you so much for joining us on this podcast and taking your time out for this. It's a pleasure having you here. Looking forward to having a great next 90, 100, 120 minutes. Let's see how it goes.
Thanks, Mohan. Thank you so much for
My first
inviting me.
question is pretty simple.
Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, it's a pleasure, as I said. My first question is a pretty open ended question, a little personal, because I think connecting with the people listening out there is important. More than knowing your business, we'd like to know in the first few minutes who Miss Latha is and your journey so far. So, if you can walk us through, your journey until this point, and what were those important things that led you in the direction of entrepreneurship.
Okay. Uh, to start off with, I started off as a corporate IT professional. I started my career early on in 91 with Wipro Technologies.
Right.
And for the next 2 decades, I was in corporate IT, typical the run, right, where you start as a programmer and end up being a delivery manager, head of. But towards the end of my stint in corporate IT, I was a part of an intrapreneurial venture in a large Indian IT major. And we set out, a group of 3 or 4 of us set out to create the entire division, and along with not just creating the product, but recruiting people for it, building the entire team, going out, getting customers, delivering it, all of that stuff. So that first time gave me the confidence that I will be able to start something out of an idea. What we started off an idea, when I left, it was about a 250 strong team in a matter of 18 to 20 months. So that was a big, personally, professionally, I consider it as a big achievement. Having said that,
Right.
what at that point in time I did not consider was the fact that when you're in a part of a larger enterprise, there is a safety cushion that comes along with it. In terms of sales team,
Right.
in terms of admin, in terms of finance, you don't have to worry about all of that stuff. So to that extent, I was a little short-sighted in the sense, yeah, I pulled it off. I can also pull it off something when I go out of a larger enterprise and do that. And at that juncture,
Right.
I once I left the organization and started on my own, I realized a lot of people would talk to me because of the logo on my visiting card, and not necessarily because Latha Srinivasan was at the other end. That was my biggest
Right.
learning when I started my enterprise. And another thing which they say is, when
Right.
you become an entrepreneur, you need to start something that is associated with what gives you joy, first thing, or what you are absolutely good at, which
Right.
is your expertise, right? And I chose, for the
Right.
first thing, I chose to create a reading space for children, a space where children would start to read. That was the
Right.
first enterprise that I started when I left my corporate IT job. I would take a couple of steps
Right.
back, and then I would also tell you where I started off from. I come from a I did my schooling and college from a smaller town in Tamil Nadu called Coimbatore. Right now it is big, but those days it was a little
Right.
small when I was there. I also studied in a very typical, simple school, no frills attached. But what my school did was it inculcated in us a joy of reading. We had the most wonderful library. Even if I look back, I believe that library was one of the biggest factors in me becoming what I am right now. And also the teachers who said
Right.
reading your school books alone wasn't enough. You need to go beyond what was there and then read what was there. And that same thing was also supported at home. My father was an avid reader. My siblings also used to read a lot. So I grew up in a culture where reading was more the norm than an exception. And hence, when I
Right.
decided to leave corporate IT and become an entrepreneur, I started off creating this reading
Right.
space, the library for children, which I ran for about 10 years. And then what happened was, when we
Right.
started this library, there was I people parents would walk in and say, see, you have this library, but my child cannot read, right? So why don't you start a reading program for kids?
Mm.
And I started a reading program for kids, and
Right.
these kids would come from good schools in Coimbatore, sorry, in Bangalore, not just the state board schools, but even good schools, ICSE and the IB schools curricula, right? And at the same time, an NGO which
Right.
was working with out migrant labor children also came to us about the same time and said, your space in the library is free during the daytime. Children are not coming in. Why don't you help us
Right.
with a similar program
Right.
for our children as well? When we started working with this NGO, the
Okay.
other thought that came to me was, the problem seems to be the same: the inability to read fluently, inability to comprehend what you read. It is just that the degree of severity was different in these two social economic groups. And I did what I did best. We started
Right.
off creating a software for children that would help them read, help them
Mm.
understand what they have read, help them write creatively. And that started off as a
Okay.
software which became the foundation of the edtech enterprise that it later on would become. So the first 3 years
Right.
I created this software, and then I went on to get it evaluated by a few industry heads. And when I went to it, one of them said,
Right.
this looks very interesting. Again, a very big publisher said, it looks very interesting, sell it to us. And I was an individual. I had no idea
Okay.
how to sell it to a large MNC. So I reached out to IIM Bangalore's NSRCEL. I just went out to say, look, I have this problem. Now, what do I do? And the person there actually gave me a suggestion saying, look, you can make a business out of this. Why do you want to sell it off to somebody else? Right? You created a software, make a business out of it. And
Right.
that was how Chipper Sage as a social enterprise came into being. We were incubated at IIM Bangalore's
Got it.
NSRCL for about a couple of years. And then from there we moved on. But that's how the
Right.
idea of Chipper Sage actually came in.
Okay. Got it. Uh, Great, ma'am. Let me just backtrack a little bit. I'd like to address a couple of things here. Of course, you focused on more about the time and your experience, but another thing that I'd like to address, especially for people who might be in similar situation that you were in just before you started off this entrepreneurial journey. Now, when somebody is in a corporate job for like 2 decades, right, there's a certain amount of comfort that you get accustomed to, a certain amount of lifestyle that you get accustomed to, and then transitioning into an entrepreneurial thing comes with a lot of challenges and apprehensions. Now, one of the most common things is this, right? What I'd like to ask you is, what was that that made you uh, think to yourself, okay, you know what, 2 decades of corporate job experience, now let me do something interesting. So did you always want to do something interesting, or was it that you covered your finances well, and you were in a better position to kind of take a risk? Because obviously when you start off, we don't know if it's going to be a success or not, so it's a gamble. And before you gamble, you need to make sure your finances are covered, because it's a practical thing. You might have a family and all those things. So can you please deep dive into this, and how did you approach this, and what was the thought process behind this?
Good question, Jagmohan. See, when I did this, I can only speak for myself. When I did this, it is one thing is, would I want to
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
here for 8 to 10 hours a day? That was one thought process that came, right? As I told you, it is something that you love. Hence, you go
Right.
with the flow. The time doesn't matter. The challenges do not matter. For me, being with books, helping children
Right.
learn to read, help. So when children enjoy what they are reading, for me, that was my payback. Money aside, keeping money aside, that was my biggest
Right.
payback. And I found real happiness when parents would come and say, thank you so much, my child has started reading because of this program of yours. Thank you so much because now my child
Right.
sits down and even is able to read a book. So those were my biggest payback. That was first thing. But having said that, did I consider finance as one of the motives? I don't think so. For me,
Right.
I did not doubt. The very important thing. I didn't doubt. Maybe it could be ignorance. It could just be innocence. You can call it whatever it is. For even for a moment, I did not
Right.
think that it would fail. Though I know people do say it will not,
Right.
9 out of 10 startups do fail. But when you start with the intention, with the
Right.
doubt that it may fail, then you're setting up yourself for failure, because your thoughts can become a reality, right? That's actually very important in a quantum domain. It is actually very important. So to set, not
Right.
even having a doubt in what you are doing and having complete faith in what you are doing, that is one singular motive. But the
Right.
second one, which I have told people, young entrepreneurs, is that what is your appetite for ambiguity? A lot of us don't have appetite for
Right.
ambiguity. We want things to be done in a particular manner. We want no, we want people, what should I say, we want that paycheck to come in on the first of every month. We cannot deal with, now today I don't have money, but how am I going to handle the payroll for this month? Those kind of ambiguous situations that constantly come. Or your vendor who has promised you delivery may not even turn up. In a larger setup, it doesn't affect you personally, but when you're an entrepreneur, it impacts you very closely. And you have your employees would suddenly leave. Once again, a larger setup would buffer you from these shocks. As an entrepreneur, you're exposed, you're overexposed, if I were to say.
Right.
So how much are you tolerant towards ambiguity? What is your emotional state of mind? Very
Right.
important. If you are the kinds to get stressed out about all of that, maybe you may want to wait for some time, develop that emotional muscle before you become an entrepreneur. I would really consider that. The third and the most important is that what is the
Right.
financial backing that you have? In my case, yeah, I had worked for 2 decades. I did have some cushion. I wouldn't. It wouldn't be truthful if I said I did not. I did have some financial cushion. Plus, there was also another person coming in. My husband was
Right.
still in a corporate job. That was the secure aspect of it.
Right.
So young entrepreneurs who don't have it, I guess
Right.
they must do it, because otherwise it adds up to the stress. It does. Where, so one thing is figure out
Right.
how much of runway you have in terms of time, how much runway you have in terms of finance. That knowledge is first very, very important. That is a knowledge that you must have. The second one is how much
Right.
joy do you derive from doing the work that you are doing. If you're really, really happy, then I guess that will take you, and that makes the journey much more easier. The third is the tolerance towards ambiguity. So three things
Right.
I would really tell entrepreneurs, because if you don't have all the three, then it is
Right.
going to be stressful. It is and then maybe they may bail out far more earlier than otherwise. It would help if we have fellow co-travelers in this journey. If you have friends who think on similar lines, who are willing to join hands with you, that would be wonderful. But otherwise, if you're willing to do that alone, I guess it's very important.
Got it. So you did not have any
In the
co-founders. You were
beginning, yes, I
alone.
was alone.
Okay. Of course, having a team is one thing, but as a leader, not
Yeah,
having another co-leader. So I think you were the only one who led
that's right.
this entire initiative. Um, Ma'am, it was very interesting. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people, but then the way you put it, right? The how much ambiguity can one handle? I think uh, you just kind of summed the entire entrepreneurship, especially when you are not looking at a certain way in which it is done in terms of structure. So I would like to ask you, first of all, how much ambiguity did you face? Did you account for ambiguity before you started off, or is this something you're talking in hindsight? You faced ambiguity and then you realized, okay, this is what it is, or you knew it from before? And how do you think one must handle, or how did you handle it personally?
So, as I told you, we have been a part of a team which created an entrepreneurial setup in a larger company, right? So I knew there was a certain amount of ambiguity that was there.
Right.
The other one also
Mm, mm,
was
mm, mm,
the
mm.
ability to step up. When I say ability to step up is, I have never done sales before. I had always been the person to present the product to somebody, but for somebody else from the sales team who would close it, who would follow up
Right.
for payment. So these are things which would come into your
Right.
plate if you become an entrepreneur. So sales is very important. And one thing which I realized after I became an entrepreneur, which in
Right.
hindsight is, first and foremost, an entrepreneur is a salesperson. If there is an entrepreneur who will come in and say, I'm good in the product creation, I'm good in innovation, I'm good in creativity, but I want somebody to do sales, I think that's going to be a little bit challenging for that person, because you need to sell your idea first to
Right.
yourself, to your co-leaders, as you call it, to your team members, to your investors, to your employees, to your final customers who would pay. And you are the person who should be able to do that.
Right.
That was my learning when I became an entrepreneur. I would often say I'm not a salesperson, but the first week or 2 weeks into the game, I realized, if how much ever I tell my team, this is the way you have to present the product or the service. If I am there, I am able to put it with far more conviction, far more passion than what my team would do it. And I was able to handle all objections from my customers. And hence I realized that I'm the sales leader for my organization, and no one else can fill in that shoes. And even today, that's the case, because when as a founder
Right.
you're convinced that why you have started it and how it will benefit the customer. And that's important. It's not that you're selling a product, it has to benefit the customer. So you put yourself in the customer's shoes and tell the customer, this is how I have envisioned the product, and this is how this product will benefit you.
Right. Um, Interesting, because you you had some amount of experience, a little bit of experience from that entrepreneurial journey that you had within your company. It was like, you did take off, you were flying, but then you knew that you were supported by a larger thing, that so there was, you were not all alone, you were not on your own. But still, probably looking back, it seems like you were it was a very nice way to start off, just to get to know few aspects of entrepreneurship without having that huge pressure of being the only person. But you also said that 2 weeks into your startup, you realized that sales is something that you had to figure out, because the founder has to be the salesperson foremost, right? Because you need to sell your idea, if not anything else. But there are some people who are so traumatized by the word sale or sales, and they just associate sales with target, and then it's a stressful thing for them. But then it's not about that. If you're a founder, you need to be ready for it. Is there a certain, for you personally, did you just realize it like cold turkey? You just went cold turkey on it. You know what? It is what it is. I have no choice. I'm just gonna go put myself into it, and then do whatever it comes. Or where it was there a conscious change in the way you looked at sales, and you convinced yourself, okay, you know what, this is how I need to go about it. And did you equip yourself with any trainings, or did you have a mentor or some sort of
Okay,
that?
so when I started long back, there was the concept of mentorship wasn't very prevalent, or at least I wasn't aware of it. That's the honest answer.
Mm,
So
right.
having spent enough
Right.
years in the corporate world, I was aware that if I needed to do something, change has to come from within. You have to do it first, and there was no other option there. That's why I said, no, the tolerance towards ambiguity. This is something which is very vague. Can I do it? Let me try it. And that's how I started off, right? So I had
Right.
to do sales, and it was a self discovery
Hmm.
process, as a journey into it. And now, I see the challenge why many people think sales is wrong is we have a very negative impression about sales. These are guys who actually lie to you, these are guys who actually push
Right.
their product to you, etc. So if you look at sales from the
Right.
perspective of helping your customer, and if you present your product or service in a manner that is going, that they realize that is going to help them, then it becomes easier. So in my first situation,
Right.
and that is how I have trained my sales team. and I'm not too sure, whether if I was successful all the time helping them my own sales team realize it. But here is a process. Like, here you have a your child cannot read, and here we have a product and a service which can help you do it. So what benefits does your child get if he or she can read better? More confident, your child will be more confident, your child will get
Right.
better grades in school, you will be less stressed, and the child can, probably have much more information, can actually would know what he or she wants to do later in life. You put the service in a way that they can realize it. I think it is Steve Jobs who said this. It's not your customer responsibility to think of how to use your product. It is your responsibility to tell the customer how they or how they must be looking at your product. So that's important as a
Right.
entrepreneur, or for any salesperson for that matter. It's not just the entrepreneur. For any salesperson, anyone who's looking at the sales role, they have to put themselves in the customer shoes, and that is absolutely important. There is no shortcut to that. And having said that, off late, I have also mentored quite a bit of entrepreneurs, young and old. And I believe many of them do not know how to do this. For instance, I have new entrepreneurs in my own family, and then they have somebody, they just call up and say, no, what do I do in this situation? So there's someone whom they can look up to, whom they can immediately call for answers. And I always tell young entrepreneurs, you are in a very good space. Your age, your inexperience, you can use it to your advantage. You can go out and tell your customer, look, I'm inexperienced, I'm young, please help me out. You can say that. But for people who are slightly older, you need to have someone who can help you out, someone whom you can speak and who can clarify these thoughts, and probably come up with a statement or some kind of a way that you would present your business to the customer. And that's important. That's very important, that entrepreneurs reach out to other entrepreneurs for support, for mentoring. And it need not be mentoring need not be the one person always mentoring the other. Someone whom we can discuss and get more clarity.
Right.
Someone to
Someone to
talk to,
talk
someone
to.
who understands where you're coming
Um,
from and is able to give you credit. And final decision only lies with the entrepreneur. The other person can never do that. They can only tell you, be a sounding board, and then you can take it from there. That's the way that I would look at it. Yeah.
yeah. Great. So, ma'am, the way I, look at what you said, at least for the people who are out there listening, who are about to take that next step towards entrepreneurship, and who are aware that they need to be a good salesperson, or forget being a good salesperson, at least they're willing to sell, and who have a problem with that. The best way to look at it from what you said is this: look, if you want to save yourself that entire negative aspect of sales, you there is just one simple solution to it. Make your product really helpful. Make it something that actually solves people's gaps, so that you really don't have to sell it. All you need to do is just go present the idea of your product, and tell them how it's going to benefit them. It's going to sell itself. I think this is the only shortcut that there is to sales, and then the rest of the things are just best practices from sales. I think sales becomes a very negative job if your product is not really valuable. When you sell something that really doesn't help, I think that's when it becomes a negative experience, and that's when you become a real salesman, when there is no need. Probably, I think this is a perspective that people out there listening can take away, and that's exactly what I understood from, because you didn't you looked at it from a point of view. Look, there is a problem out there, and I have a product that can solve it. So, selling or not, I'm just going to go present this, and if they see the value, they're going to buy it. And of course, you would have done your job in showing whatever the value that you could to the best of it. But then there's only so much that you can control. Great. uh, Ma'am, talking about the sales, right? You spoke about approaching an MNC company even before realizing that this could become a business in itself. And then, they were asking you to sell the software that you built,
Mhm.
right? So, when you went and approached this MNC company, what was that experience like? I mean, did you go in knowing that you were going to sell it, or did you just go to get your product validated? Or did you go in to pitch it and then make them use your software, or what was that experience
So
all
it was
about?
a couple of things that I had in mind. One of okay, before I answer this question, one of the important things that entrepreneurs must know is the concept of networking. Right, networking
Right.
is so important, and it's unfortunately not highlighted enough
Hmm.
other than in business schools. In colleges people need to tell, in schools people need to understand this. Networking, what call it by whatever name it is, unless you talk to people, many different people to get views, you will never know who would be able to help you or whom you can help. That's very important. So when we built this software, I did reach
Right.
out to a number of people in the industry, in the education industry, in the technology industry, and otherwise as well, to ask them, is it of worth, is it of any value to it, and how should and what were their views on the problem that I was trying to solve. And that was how I ended up
Right.
meeting the CEO of this company. And then, and that CEO thought it made a little, he didn't obviously have time to go through the presentation, but he said, look, this is the head of my content, please go talk to him. So I did go meet the head of the content, and that person did think it was very useful. They did not have something like that. In fact, they did not even think it was a problem, and for him it was a new idea. He said, we'll buy it from you outright. So when I went to them for two things. One is, they were
Right.
already working in a number of schools. So my understanding was, if they were okay with it, they could probably take this and roll it out to this many schools, and we could work out a collaboration. So the second more important part of it is collaboration, right? So I went
Right.
for validation and collaboration, but both of them did not happen in that particular situation. It
Right.
ended up in a very different way. But it's important for entrepreneurs to think
Okay.
collaboration. It's important for entrepreneurs to think networking. And having said all of this, there are certain cases when I have taken the raw end of the deal. There are people who would say, you know what, give your product to us for some time, and then we'll validate it, and then they'll probably get some ideas from it, and then they will say thank you so much. But I would suggest, that's okay, that's a learning for me, and I would
Hmm.
say, not every person whom you meet is going to be that way, is going to take you for a ride. So I'm okay with it. If that is what it's going to be,
Right.
I'm in a life stage, Jagmohan, where I can handle, it's okay. Some people would, there are always different type of people in this world, and there's one set of people, that's okay. I would not take it to my
Yes.
heart and say, okay, this person did, gave me a raw deal. I would not even process such information beyond a couple of minutes. Just say, it's okay, it's a learning for me, maybe next time hours I would be more careful. But I believe people
Right.
should reach out for collaboration to, in market reach, because every organization is solving a piece of the puzzle in the larger, in any industry if you take. And if all these people could collaborate, it would come up with much better products, much better service offerings as well. That's my view.
Got it. So this was also. I mean, is this the first experience where you had a, not a great experience? Did they say that they're
No,
going to use
this is
your
not the case. No,
product and then
they
they
were
nothing
interested.
moved?
They were working with a number of schools, and they were quite interested. But what they said is, instead of licensing it from me, they would rather buy it from me, because I was a small player for them. Yeah, which is true. Compared with their size, I was a small
Buy it
player.
from you.
So they said it would make more sense for you to sell it off. And first they said exclusivity, and then they said non-exclusivity. So they did talk of both, and they were very fair. I would, to be fair to them, they were very fair. It is just that
Right.
when I went, I got different ideas and I didn't sell it to them. That's how it
Okay.
was.
Okay, great. Ma'am, you said this was an experience. This is after you built the software, which happened over a period of 3 years,
Yeah,
correct? And that is when this happened. But then, when you started off Chipper Sage, or without putting the name to it, also your idea was to start a reading room
yeah.
for kids, start a library where kids would come and they would read. At that point, I don't think you even had the idea of helping kids read. You only wanted a space to facilitate the process of okay. So, and you said, while you did this, kids sorry they came and they asked you for help with how to read, and then you started to teach. What was the journey from you wanting to help kids read, and then that leading up to you building a software? So what are the things that you discovered in that process, and how and why did you decide you needed a software for it?
Right. So when we started off, I had this library with about 8,000 books across all, uh, should I say, subjects, right? Across all interest areas, topics. And we had
Topics,
about 3,000
subjects,
square
right,
foot area place in Bangalore where kids could come in, parents could come in, sit with them, read to them. We also had reading programs, we had storytelling sessions, we had all of these. So what initially we
right,
started off only as a service. We did not have a product, right? We started off as a service, and then when we ran this over a period
right,
of about 12 months, we found we constantly kept enhancing the way that we were delivering, enhancing the content, etc. And by the time we reached the end of about an year to slightly more than a year, which we used the same content for children who are going to high-end private schools, and this NGO which was working with out of school children and migrant laborers children, we found that it sort of worked across, except that one group would probably take about 6 months to cover one level, whereas the other group will cover it in 1 month. That was the variance, but we found that the way that we set out to do actually worked. And I come from an IT world, and then I come from a process oriented thing. So what do you make it to do
right,
scalable? How do you make it repeatable? How do you ensure that a particular
right,
process would give you the same results over and over again? By automating it. And how do you automate software?
right.
And that was how we built this software. And
Hmm.
we also brought in enough guidelines to say this is the way that they need to go across in the software. So we started off with a service
Got it.
offering. We repeated it so that it had stabilized, and then we converted that into a software. And we just thought through, because I have always done software creation, software development for about 20 years, so I understand that process. And then we made it as a software, and then we developed guidelines for people how to use that software as well. So I'm pretty happy to say, that across multiple foundations have used it, and they have also found benefits from that.
Great, amazing, ma'am. I have a question here. Uh, you know, um, the answer to my question was that scaling makes complete sense. You if you want to do it at a larger scale, then automated automation software comes into picture. Great. But eventually software, you tried to make a software that did exactly what you did even before the software was there. Now I have a doubt, right? Reading, you wanted to help kids read, or even before that you just wanted to create a space where kids would come and they would read. Probably that had a connection with your childhood, where you read a lot, and then you had a connection, and you were passionate about it. But now, what is the exact purpose behind this? Now, the way I look at it, reading, it has two things, right? One is you read loudly whatever you read. The real life skills of that translate to, say, being a voiceover artist, or reading out stuff so that people can listen. That is one thing. Then there's another aspect to reading. You read to kind of consume something, understand something. Please correct me if I'm wrong. This is how I'm just looking at it. So, what was your intention behind this whole thing? You wanted kids to just pronounce properly. Did you look reading like that, or did you think there was a gap in kids understanding and absorbing the information that they read, or was it a combination of both?
I believe it's a combination. I can just tell you from my personal experience, right? We were in the United States. My first
Right,
one was my eldest son was born, and when we were bringing the baby out of the hospital,
right.
along with the other things of diaper, baby powder, there was a set
Hmm.
of 6 books that were given. That was though I was a reader, I have
Right.
always been a reader all through my life. That's the first time it occurred to me that here in this country,
Hmm.
people expect parents
Hmm.
to read to a child, which is just getting out of the hospital, right? And the books were very interesting. And
Hmm.
I have my earliest
Hmm.
memory of my son is like he was about maybe about 4 5 months old, and he was just holding a book to his, holding a book, very close to him, kinds. And they would consider books almost
Right.
as toys. It was Books were not something that to be kept on the shelf to be opened at a particular time. It had to be in a situation
Right.
where the child
Right.
looks at it almost as another toy, something they can go to whenever they are bored, whenever they need, something interesting to do. And that was the environment countries in the
Right.
West happened to consider reading as. Having said that, I have, as even when I was in the
Right.
corporate IT world, my children were growing up, the only thing consistently I have done is read to them at the end of the day for a couple of hours. Every single day this reading would happen to them. And when that I realized, when my child was just getting out of upper KG, or what UKG is what they call it, he was reading fluently. And the choice of words that he would use, even at 5, when he was 5 and a half, was very interesting, because for me, I looked at it as a very organic process. It was not structured in my mind. I'm not an educationist by training, but for me, that was a very beautiful thing to see. And so both my children were reading fluently by the time they were 5 years. And the only thing that I would do is this
Right.
consistent input to them that was given to them when they were young, when they were growing up in those days. And it was easy to engage a
Hmm.
child with stories because you are creating an imagination. You are giving them enough vocabulary to express their emotions. You are adding it to their what should I say, the way that they can think. You are influencing the way they can think. You are expanding their world. All of it can only come, in my view, even today, only through reading and not through watching. Reading that way is a very active
Hmm.
process. If you look at it, that LSRW, listening
Right.
comes before reading, listening comes before speaking, which comes before reading, which comes before writing. In India, a lot of us teach children how to write the ABCs. As in, when you go to a kindergarten, they teach you how to write ABC, the alphabet. Unfortunately, even in schools in
Right.
India, we do not give enough importance to reading. I have seen very, very less number of schools in my 13 years in my entrepreneurship journey where they give emphasis to reading. It's not. A lot of us in India
Right.
look at reading as a means to an end. When I say this, I mean, if I read well, then I can get good marks in the exam, which means whatever it means, right? I am not
Right.
looking at reading
Right.
as a
Right.
recreational activity. I am not looking at reading as a way to expand my world. I am not looking at reading as a way
Right.
to improve my creativity, my imagination. And that, unfortunately, is lost in schools in India now. I can say that with emphasis because I've done enough amount of interaction with teachers, enough amount of interaction with schools. So when I
Right.
walk into a school, I one of the when I used to sell to schools, right? I would often ask them, when I would walk to a principal, well-known schools in Bangalore, they would say, "No, all my children read very well."
Right.
They would first see, when you, how do you
Hmm.
solve a problem? When you accept the problem exists. Very often than not, it is
Right.
ignorance and unwillingness to accept. So many principals, especially of budget
Right.
private schools whom we worked with a lot, because we were a social enterprise, they were ignorant of the problem. They
Right.
would confuse
Right.
fluency with proficiency. According to them, if a child can read a sentence, they thought their job was done. But what they did not know, see, this is a statement, right?
Hmm.
You learn how to read between the ages of 3 to 7. After 7, you read to learn, right? First you learn how to read, and then you
Right.
read how to learn.
Learn to
And
read.
read to learn. But
Right.
many teachers, many educationists confuse when they say, "Oh, my child can read well." That's when we used to give them symptoms. We used to
Right.
ask them. That's when, as a entrepreneur, as a person in the sales team, you need to be able to make the customer, your prospect, understand where, how you can help them. So one of the questions that I would ask is, "Ma'am, in your third grade or a fourth grade, no, fourth standard child, when you give out a question
Right.
paper during the examination, during the test, does he or she get up in the class and say, 'Ma'am, I don't understand this question'?" If that is that, so many teachers would accept that there is a problem. So even in grade 3, grade 4, when a question
Yes.
paper is given out, many students stand up and say, "Ma'am, I don't understand the problem." And then the teacher would come up and say, "He'll explain the problem, the child is able to do the arithmetic." We would tell them by
Right.
grade 3, a child must be able to do what we call unseen. Like when I say unseen, it is some passage that has not been introduced to the child before. It has been given to them. They should read, understand, and then do whatever is expected to be done on that particular activity. When we give the
Right.
symptom, many schools accept, yes, there is a problem, right? Students in grade 2 and 3, they, sorry, 3 and 4, they get up and say, yes, we don't know how to do this. The second problem, the second symptom, even if that we say is, does your grade 6 to 8 or standard 6 through 8, do they expect you to dictate notes to them for their science, social studies, civics, whatever you call it? Many schools say yes, in which case there is a
Right.
problem. By grade 6, any child, once you explain the concept, should be able to write their own answers. There is no need for schools to dictate
Right.
notes because it's too late, right? So what happens when you finish grade
Right.
10, when you finish grade 12, for instance, Indian students are
Right.
expected to compete with the rest of the students from across the globe. Okay, across the
Right.
globe, children know how to write their own thoughts. How they know how to express their thoughts in words. They know how to construct it in a logical manner. I have to start my introduction, set the context, give my thoughts. Now the first thought should go, transition to the second thought, transition to the third, and this is how I conclude. They know, they are taught in schools how to do this over and over again. It's only in India we're not, people
Right.
don't do this. And very interestingly, I have been told even in
Right.
engineering colleges, lecturers these days dictate notes. A very sad state of affairs, but that's what it is. And
Right.
a few years ago, a lot of us were never,
Okay.
when I entered the industry way back, no, about 3.5 decades ago, 3 decades ago, three plus decades ago, we would be,
Right.
software in India was its infancy. A lot of us had to do things all by
Right.
ourselves. Nobody would tell us, right, how to do this. We had to find ways. And how did we do it? By reading, right? We used to read, understand, and then do what are supposed to be done. Many kids these days are not willing to
Right.
read because that habit, which has to be developed in primary grades, which has to be developed in middle school grades, is lacking in schools. and and that is the
Right.
problem that we sought out to solve. We started to tell schools this is a challenge. When your student has to, when they reach high school, when they reach secondary school, this is a problem that happens. And please resolve it
Right.
in the primary grades, please resolve it in the middle school grades, because by the time your student reaches ninth grade, high school or secondary school, they are in a position to be able to decide what they are good at, what they can do, and how they should construct their own career,
Right.
construct their own future. Otherwise they are constantly looking for help. Now what should I do, what
Right.
should, they are looking for input coming from outside, whereas it has to be inside out, right? Okay, I like reading about astronomy, I like reading about robotics, I like trying to read about this, and I can do it by myself. So in India, people think teaching is akin to learning. It's not. Learning is a very individual process, right? A teacher can walk two steps, but the
Right.
learner has to also meet the teacher. If that is not happening, a learning is, the
Right.
teaching learning process is not complete, which is, and many times student has to learn at his or own pace, and that only can happen when you are very comfortable reading your textbooks, very comfortable reading other things apart from this. I'll give you a simple math. Okay, most schools in India,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think if even I can talk about CBSE to a large extent state board, they have one English period per
Mm.
day, which is about 45
Mm.
minutes. And if you look at it over a
Right.
1 year period, just assume like for 45 minutes, and if you just do it over, what should I say, over a month, it's about 20 days of school. So about,
Mm.
what should I say, 90 minutes. So you do the
Right.
math, right? So when you do the math, approximately
Yes. 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 It's less than 20 hours. 15 hours
15
is
hours
what they
per year.
have
So when you do
English
this over
classes
a
for
period of 1 year, they
per
would,
month.
if you consider holidays, etc., a child gets approximately about 100 hours of instruction by a teacher. And that is 100 hours of instruction. I'm not even telling you individual attention on a student. Okay. So what happens in a class of 45
Right.
children, it gets divided by that much. So which means over a period of 1 year, a teacher can spend approximately about an hour with a student. Is that enough? I ask parents. So
Right.
most parents only then wake up. So they'll say, no, my school student, my son's or my child's school is good. They can do this. But I say school can only do so much. Your child spends X amount of time in your school. It's only you have to continue that learning at home. You need to continue to develop that environment at
Right.
home. And reading is, reading and comprehending is a skill that needs to be developed. The child is very, very young. And the second one, you
Right.
can you can actually, what should I say, carry forward the skills of learning one language into another. There's a lot of debate which I've heard in certain schools saying, oh, English is a foreign language, you need to do a mother tongue. No problem, please go ahead with your mother tongue. But can your child express their thoughts very creatively, very beautifully in their own mother tongue? By the time they reach high school, middle school, they should be able to do that. If they are not, that means the language instruction is not complete. And if you
Right.
know how to learn one language, you can easily carry forward the techniques, that methodology to another language. That's proven science. There is enough science out there,
Right.
which is why we say, just because you like your
Right.
mom, love your mom, doesn't mean you have to hate your aunt. It doesn't matter. Just because it's English, don't we are saying it, but English, you like it or not, it's a language that helps you, gives you job mobility. It helps you to get better, what should I say, career opportunities, education opportunities. And you need to have it. Please study your mother tongue, but also ensure that you're equally proficient in English. And how does that happen in a country like India, where most of us don't speak the language natively? Is by reading. Reading is a very passive input, speaking is an active input. Listening is a very passive input, but writing is a very active
Right.
input. So in LSRW, you should listen as much as you speak and read as much as you write. And all of this has to come together for language development. And only then it becomes wholesome. And that is what we set out to do with our software. We said,
Right.
again, it has been a journey for us in creating the software. We did it for, initially we did it for ages 3 to 7, and then we did it for ages 7 to 12, and then we did it for ages between 12 and 16. For us, it has been a journey, but the journey has been very beautiful, because a lot of people who had a similar passion joined us in our team, and we were able to create it. But the message that should go out is, fluency is not the same as proficiency. Very important. and
Right.
and it has to be developed only in primary years. To give you one more example where India stands in
Right.
terms of reading and thing, I'm sure you have heard of PISA, right? Which is like International Students Assessment. You have heard of PISA.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the year right
Yeah.
now. I can't recall it off my head. But India, Kapil Sibal was the education minister at that time. He offered Tamil
Yeah.
Nadu and Himachal, which is supposed to be higher in the terms of education achievements, for and students in from these two states, students were at 15 years, were assessed at an international level, right? And program for international
Right.
students assessment is what we call. And India came 71
Yeah.
out of 72nd countries in terms of reading skills, and this is for students at 15 years. Okay, so what happens is, when
Oh my God.
children are given something that they have not been exposed to, right, and asked to read, understand, comprehend, and then answer questions, students in India are falling behind. Parents who are educated, who understand, who give an
Right.
environment thing, they can go forward. There is no problem about it. What happens to the vast majority of children in India? First of all, ignorance and unwillingness to accept. These are the two things that are very important for parents, for educationists to understand. And that's the segment that we were addressing. That's a segment we would like to work with.
Right.
We continue to work with. So, yeah, that's where I am. Sorry. I started.
No, no, no. This was great, very insightful, because this is exactly, what I was trying to understand. I'm sure, reading is important, but I did not. I would have never broken it down to this much depth to understand. How now I start to think. So many people or so many students facing a lot of issues in their school, probably it's all somewhere tied to this one reading thing. If they would have probably did a little bit of reading activity, a lot of students who we probably call today as dull students or non-performing students, I think they would have probably been performing well, And I think somewhere this is lost, because I have a little bit of experience teaching students as a tutor. And then, I see that some students they perform well, some students do not perform well. And I have understood it from a point of view that, look, today all the subjects are in the language English, right? The medium of instruction is English. So naturally, if you're not good in English, you're not going to be able to pick up the subject better. But I never went beyond English. So beyond English, when you deep dive, it could be English, any language. Then there are these four pillars that you're talking about: LSRW, right? Listening, speaking, reading, writing. Now, I don't know. I think this is probably, instead of having a subject called as English in school, they must probably have subjects called as listening. They must probably have subjects called as speaking, reading, and writing. I think that should solve a lot of problems. Ma'am, it was when you were talking about you reading at least for a couple of hours to your kids every day, reading so that they could listen. So to become a better reader, um, you listen to speak. That's one thing. But what is the connection between you reading out to your kids and then them listening? And how does that help them read as well?
Wonderful question. The reason why we have to read to kids. In fact, it's one of our important components of a software was it was reading aloud with every word. As we call it read along, right? That is one
Right,
of the things that we created way back in 2011. And the reason why we need to do this is a
right,
lot of us, we are able to, as human mind is tuned for learning by association. Okay, and we call it that's why that particular technique I forget, but it's something like this, right? Let us assume that you are a 2-year-old child, and your mother gives you a glass of water and says, "Drink water." Next, she gives you an yellow colored fluid and says,
right,
"Drink juice." And the third, she gives you a white colored liquid and says, "Drink your
right,
milk." You would know the drinking is the activity of
right.
drinking, but you would quickly associate that
Hmm.
white color, the colorless was water, the yellow one was juice, and the third one was milk. You are able to make these associations, and you
Right,
would also be able to reproduce that. So, and in context, so nobody comes and tells you the drinking is when you put it in your mouth and you swallow. That's a concept of drinking. Nobody tells you that, but you just by the way it is delivered to you, you
correct.
understand by context. Much in the same way, when you read out to a child,
Right.
the way you read out with emotion, the way you read out with the passion, the way you able to pronounce those words, the child constantly, the neural
Hmm.
networks get formed, and the child is able to understand in this particular situation this word means this. I'll give you an example. For example, when you were talking
Hmm.
about an elephant, you will say the elephant uses its trunk to feed itself, to pull out certain things. The next you would say is this trunk is full of books. The third one you would say is this, the car's trunk. You please put the suitcase in the car's trunk. Right? When you say this, the child actually knows the
Right.
association. The trunk is one word, but it means different things in different context, right? And that's how language learning forms.
Right.
Nobody
Right.
even in every single Indian language, well, there's a particular word which means different in different situations, and nobody comes and explains that to you. You just know by association, by context. And
Right.
for that context to form, to structure to form, children need multiple ways of no multiple situations, multiple opportunities to learn the word. There is a research that says for a child to remember a word for life, it needs 14 different ways it can come in. So the child can say, okay, in this particular context, this word means something, and this is what it is. The child will never forget it, right? I'll give you an example, which is
Right.
actually from our software. I can give you an example. There's this word called
Sure.
respectively in English, right? And a lot of us
Right.
by
Right.
default think, yeah, everyone will know that word. But I realized it when I was giving a demo
Yes.
to teachers that not everyone really understands that word. For we had this example in our thing saying
Okay.
the capital of two countries, USA and Canada, is Washington DC and Ottawa respectively. So now, what is the capital of Canada?
Right.
So children are confused. right? They exactly don't know what's the capital of
Right.
Canada. They just try, they guess out. There are only two guesses, so they can try one or the other and they'll get the answer, right?
True guess. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I posed this question to a group of middle schoolers, and they said, you can only give one answer and that has to be right. So they were a little confused. For me it was a no brainer, but for this middle school children, it was very
Yeah.
confusing. And then I put it in another way. The
Right.
radii of two circles are 7 centimeters and 14 centimeters respectively. Now what is the area of the bigger
Right.
circle? So that came the answer. Okay, so because in their mind the word respectively is something they have learned only in math, they did not know how to use that
Hmm.
word into other subjects. If nobody has told them, nobody has pointed out, they did not have enough encounters, if I can use that word, with that particular adverb, so that they did not know how to use that learning
Right.
from one subject to another subject. And I'm just telling you just very simple example, and
Right.
this goes for everything. There's a story in our
Right.
software
Right.
about
Right.
a duckling. Okay, so duckling, and it goes on, but I think
Okay.
it's about a story. It's a very cute story about how duckling goes, and then how a chick follows it all through and through. At the end, and there's a pictorial story. At the end of it, we
Right.
ask them, what is a
Right.
duckling? Is it the young of a duck? Is it the young of a hen? Is it a young of something else? Children are stumped, because in their
Right.
minds they're looking at this beautiful duckling. They are not even making an association. Okay, it's a pictorial book,
Hmm.
and this is for grade. It's age 3. Okay, it's young children, which is why I'm saying they have to have more
Hmm.
exposure to the language, more exposure, so that they are able to make that association. And what happens for a lot of us in India is that we miss all these things. And when they come to college, we talk about data sciences. We are talk about how we can do storytelling out of graphs. How do you make good infographics? And we are not even aware of how to read images.
Right.
We are being, in fact, one of those very important,
Right.
what should I say? One of the important question which Indian students failed miserably was the ability to read a metro map, right? And Kapil Sibal dismissed it as saying,
Okay.
or I shouldn't use the word Kapil Sibal, someone that the powers that be dismissed it as saying it was culturally inappropriate for a Indian student. But what is culturally inappropriate in reading a map? It's a life skill. You need to read a map and you need to go to places, right? So
Right.
because it actually asked, it gave a
Right.
metro map and it said if this particular station was closed, how will you go to a particular place? So they need to read the map, they need to read the legend that accompanies the map and make a inference. So when I say
Right.
comprehension, it also means inferencing. It
Right.
means reading beyond what is there, to be able to think for yourself. All of it comes only with reading. And
Right.
that's why reading is such a fundamental skill that children need to acquire, not even in middle school, but in primary grades. So one of the important
Wow.
the requirement that we give to grade one teachers are like, look at this. In grade kindergarten, most schools only teach 3 letter words, 4 letter words, or whatever they call it, right? But when a child enters
Right.
grade one, he or she, depending on whichever board,
Hmm.
Indian board that they are studying, has to deal with about 5 subjects,
Hmm.
all of them in English. Leave languages like
Right.
English, mathematics, science, history, geography, computer science, whatever they do that. And they have to read, learn,
Right.
write answers, etc. And they have not taught this skill in UK in upper kindergarten. So what do they expect? Between April and May, they expect some magic to happen. So by the time the child comes to grade one, he or she is reading fluently. Doesn't happen. So many grade one teachers
Right.
struggle, and what do? They teach to the exam. They teach for the exam. They give the answers, the child actually does it,
Hmm.
and that's how kids move. And then because they are able to get quote unquote marks in school, parents do not think it is a problem. And by, as you said, by the time they
Right.
realize the child doesn't comprehend, which is why certain subjects are very hard, it is already too late. Fluency,
Right.
proficiency, both are very critical, and that has to be done only in the primary years. And it does not depend on the language. It's for any language. It could be Kannada, Hindi, Tamil, name it. And not just English, it's across.
Right.
English is far more critical because all subjects are done in that language. And
Yeah.
that's why it's important that children learn how to read books other than what is their textbooks. Often we
Got it.
confuse reading with studying. That's the problem. We think studying,
Right.
studying is very important. Studying is committing to memory. Studying is recalling a concept when it is asked. But reading is something different. Reading for leisure,
Yeah.
reading for different, learn, improve your vocabulary, reading to express your thoughts in a structured manner, reading to write well. All this is important, and that can only come if every one of us understand why it is important.
Got it, ma'am. This has been nothing short of eye opening in a lot of levels. Um, Now, the software that you're talking about, or the problem that you solve, do you only is it only accessible via schools and other organizations, or let's say, for example, somebody listening to this wants to kind of use this for their kid? Do you also provide access to individuals as well?
We started off when we started off in the in early 2010 2011. Internet inside the classroom was not an option, and we were
Right.
very clear. We were not going to replace the teacher. We are going to help the teacher with certain structured way of teaching the language. That's it. And we are curricula agnostic. When I say curricula
Right.
agnostic,
Right.
we don't say, this textbook lesson 1 lesson 2, we don't say that. But you move from alphabet to words to sentences to whatever it is. That's what the structured way of teaching the language. Having said that, we
Right.
we want someone to be there to be able to deliver this to the child. We are saying the child, no, any
Right.
technology for that matter is only effective as a person delivering it. It could be any technology, it doesn't matter, right? And a human being is required for a
Right.
young child so that the person can encourage, the person can appreciate if they have reached a milestone, because that is far more important, when the than moving ahead. Important, because in technology can only do so much,
Hmm.
right? Like,
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. Way before, when my children were very young, I had subscribed to a math
Right.
training product from one of those leading institutions, leading companies in India. Very quickly, I figured out that my
Right.
son was gaming the system. It would give him a math problem. He would look at it and he
Hmm.
would say, and he would only do the very basic work that was required to solve the problem. He would not put in his heart and soul. And very
Hmm.
quickly, I stopped the subscription because I
Right.
wanted him to work it out. The structured way of solving a problem is important, because it goes a long way.
Right.
But so many kids game the system. So you can give them tokens, you can give them gifts, you can give them stars. All of it is very nice. Technology can do it. But we need a human to say, go beyond this, do ABCD. And yeah, AI can help it,
Right.
deep learning, machine learning, all of it is interesting. But I think in a child's learning, in a journey of a child, when the person goes on, an adult, presence of an adult, the presence of an adult who's very passionate about teaching, presence of a passionate about the child's development, has got far more lasting impact than anything else. I'm yet to find a person who would say this
Right.
particular software did a lot for my life. No, it is human being did a lot to my life, and that still remains the same. A human touch is absolutely important in each one of our development.
Okay. So yeah,
So,
let's say
I'm sorry, I didn't answer
an
your question. I'm
individual
sorry.
family.
So, can a parent
Yeah.
subscribe to us? Not really. Right now, we are still
Yeah.
going the
Yeah.
B2B way. We would still need a school to subscribe, or a group of people. If there's a teacher, we can help the teacher, because the structured approach of teaching the language, if a parent can do it, nothing like it, right? But more often than not, we find parents don't have the wherewithal or the time to do it. So that's why we say we are going the teacher route still, the school route. But there are certain other products that we have. What should we say? These are products that are more like a toy kind of a thing. We call it, the tangible stuff that kids can work with, that parents can take it and work with them. We help them
Right.
what books they have to read, all that we do. But teaching the language the phonics way, the teaching the language the way it is meant to be done, we're still in going the school route, and not exactly the parent route. We're not going B2C yet.
Okay. That is. I don't know. I wish that option was available, because now what about the kids that are probably not in the schools that use your thing? So in that way, so when schools tie up with you, do they mix this with an English class, or do they have separate reading
Okay, so
classes, ma'am? Or is it an extracurricular activity that the students will
So
have to
there are a couple
subscribe
of
to?
ways that many schools have used this, Jagmohan. One of them is the
Okay.
schools, or rather, because of the parents' pressure, whatever you call it, right? They have to complete the portions, as what they call it. Then X number of poems, X number of proses have to
Right.
be taught to the
Right.
kid. So they keep the English classes aside. We require a minimum of 2 classes per week for the child to take it forward, and we give the instruction to the teacher week on week basis. We say week one you do this particular lesson, and then sorry, and week two we do this, and we also divide, go by the session also. So week one session one, week one session two, and we give that for a period of 40 sessions. We give this detailed instruction
Right.
to the teacher, and hence the teacher can deliver it in the classroom. That's what we do. And we train the teachers once in 2 months, because we have tried multiple combinations before we arrived at this. So in a period of 10 months, the school effectively can train the teachers for about 8 months, given the holidays and the exam time. So we go to the school 4 times in a year
Right.
to train the teachers, and we train the teachers for about 8 weeks. And in between
Right.
these 8 weeks, one visit from our mentor or the facilitator goes, so that where they go in and sit in the classroom, observe, is the teacher doing the way he or she is expected to deliver. So that audit also we do. So there are about, if I were to say, there are about 6 to 8 interactions with our facilitator for every school that takes our program on a
On a
yearly
yearly
basis. That's right.
basis.
Yeah.
Great. And as far as the schools are concerned, are you like all over India, or you are mainly present in the south or in Bangalore?
So we, through our various collaborations, etc., we have reached across 4.5 lakh students across 6 states. Right. Having said that, we have worked a lot with America India
Okay.
Foundation. We have worked with Swadesh Foundation. We have worked with Manipal Foundation. No,
Right.
Agastya. We have worked with multiple
Right.
foundations where, when they do the work, our work gets carried forward. That's what we have done. Because personally,
Right.
the marketing reach,
Right.
initially we were in 4 states, and post pandemic we just sort of pulled back everything. So we don't have the right now, we don't have the reach across, but if someone wants to collaborate with us, take our content, move it forward, they're more than welcome to do it. We'll be more than happy to share with them. And there are a number of foundations that take it as an after school activity as well. When they interface with the children as an after school activity, they take it. And we would love to help those children, especially our first generation English learners, to move forward, to increase their proficiency in the language. And we can train teachers in this particular activity so they can take it forward. So we are looking more at people who can collaborate with us, rather than we going directly and then interacting, because it becomes it's like running a massive machine if we were to do everything ourselves. I think that collaborations and networking but is the
Yeah.
way to go.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
my belief, my strong belief is that.
Got it. Got it, ma'am. Ma'am, I'd just like to, go back a little bit. I just wanted to cover one more aspect, right to the beginning of you starting the reading activity, right, for the kids. So, what was your business model? What did you even look at it as a business, or when you started off itself, you were looking at it from more of a social entrepreneurship sort of a thing?
Okay, so I know it actually evolved, right? We constantly get feedback from the market, and then we sort of evolve. So initially, I wanted
Right.
to work with anyone who wanted to learn how to read, and anyone who wanted to implement in their schools. That's how it started
Okay.
off with. But my interaction with the
Okay.
market was that many high end schools, even though the problem exists, the principals would refuse to accept that there's a problem that was existing. They would not want, so even though in
Right.
private they would admit, saying, you know what, 50% of my class can't read, but when they have to make an official announcement, they will say, no,
Hmm.
everybody can do this. First thing. The second
Hmm.
challenge, which some of these
Right.
high end schools or schools that charge a significant amount as fees face, is that many parents would come back and say, this is what you're supposed to do. And why are you having a third party to do this work for you, right? So, that I understand is a big problem for schools to
Right.
address. The third thing is that the
Right.
teachers who come in to teach do not no, what should I say? They get very confused if you were to do something beyond their regular coursework, because if there is regular coursework, it is significantly no, what should I say?
Yeah.
It's quite intense, and they have to deliver that. The parents would come and ask what happened. There are 10 lessons. You've only done 5 lessons. What happens on all of the questions they would ask? So everyone is interested in
Right.
completing the portions, not really worrying have the children caught up. Or in a class of 40 children, maybe 30 of them are
Right.
caught up, but what happens to the 10 of them who are lagging behind? But not in an Indian classroom with so many people. That kind of thought is not gone in. And I think it takes a
Right.
lot for a parent to, at least in Bangalore I can say, is that schooling unfortunately has become more of a commodity. I'm paying a very high fee, so you take care of everything. That's become that way in Bangalore, at least.
Right. Right.
So the if you actually were to tell a parent, this is what you have to do it, and the parent actually comes back and says, "I'm paying with the fees, please do this." So during the pandemic we had this, for B2C we had this, where people would come together, a group of children would come together, and we had a mentor who would train them, who would help them read over a Zoom session. We had this. But what used to happen is, after that, when we used to give them
Okay.
workshop homework to say, please read this particular story and come back and narrate the story to us, they wouldn't have done that homework because there was no support for the kids at home, because the parent was either working or very busy otherwise. So I guess, to
Right.
make our nation, quote unquote, really educated with people who can think for themselves, out of the box, who can think, who can read and understand and
Right.
make their own inferences, we need a concerted effort, not just from the schools but by the parents also, and who can, in fact, both of them have to inspire the students to do that. It cannot be done by the schools alone. That's not possible, and I don't believe it's a school's job. The schools got lot more things to do. They can only expose you to certain situation, and it's the parents' responsibility to carry it forward, because they have a far more, what should I say,
Right.
investment in their child's future. I'm sure schools also have, but it's that much more lesser than what a parent has got. The school has to expose the kids to, to sports, to arts, to other things, and reading, unfortunately, most of the time takes a backseat.
Got it.
Oh, sorry. To answer your question, which is one
So,
of the reasons why we went back and said we will only work with budget private schools, or that's why, and then we morphed into a social enterprise. We didn't set out to be a social enterprise, but we morphed into a social enterprise based on the kind
right.
of people we were reaching out to, and because we had to also downside, we have to downgrade our pricing as well. We could not charge schools, the kind of schools that we're working with, the same price as what we would normally charge otherwise. It was not possible, and it wouldn't have worked as well, which is why our charges were very, very nominal. We used to charge by the grades and not by the number of students. So we had to change our revenue model or pricing very differently for all of these individuals.
Right. And when you say, you're now focused only on the private budget schools, you do not go beyond that. You've
No,
restricted
we
yourself
when
to these.
schools do come to us, we explain to them who we are, and there are schools which have also taken our
You
program. We are
do.
not we
Okay.
don't we are
Got it.
not averse to it, but we wouldn't actively sell to those schools, to the high end schools. We don't actively.
You're not
Yeah,
putting effort into it because of
yeah,
the
yeah.
kind of response you've got. Got it. But from a revenue perspective, from a money perspective, how much of a difference is it to be a social entrepreneur versus a normal entrepreneur?
I think entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs, right? It is just the fact, as I told you, what gives you, what should I say, satisfaction that you have your has that you have delivered it. For instance, if I say, a child who goes
Right.
to a high-end private school, if I were to say high-end private school, a public school in here, has the means, the parents have the means
Right.
to even retain a private tutor if his or her child is not doing whatever they're supposed to do. They also have the means to get to help in other ways.
Right.
But what happens to a horde of other parents, or other children whose parents either do not know the child is lagging behind, they think the child is a slow learner, or the teachers in these schools who also come
Right.
from equally challenged socio-economic backgrounds, hence they themselves are not readers, and hence they
Right.
can't promote reading as a skill among the students. So most to One of the
Right.
a few instances I've seen, even teachers are not don't understand what they read. That's a truth. That truth be told, that's a case right now, right?
Right.
So that when I work with
Right.
this group of children and then I see them improve, it actually gives them immense satisfaction. And on the as an entrepreneur, obviously your revenues are much lower when you work with these kind of schools because the paying capacity is only so much, right? And yeah, your
Right.
profits are that much more lesser, your bottom line is that much more lesser. But I guess that's the way we started out it, and we are happy with it. We have no complaints or no regrets at all, whatsoever.
Got it, man. Got it. Just wanted to touch upon the fact if being a social entrepreneur impacts, and I think you clarified that it does affect. Uh, Ma'am, now another question that I want to ask is, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So we were talking about social entrepreneurship. Yeah. I just wanted to understand the structure of how you are taking your product to the market. So this is how I've kind of built it up in my head. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So let's consider you are the manufacturer. Okay, you have your product with you, and then you're using foundations to distribute it. And once they distribute, you're further going and helping them implement it. Am I correct?
It's not just through foundations, we also reach across to schools. So
Yeah,
we reach
yeah.
directly to schools as
You
well. We
also
reach
do
directly through schools, yeah.
directly to schools, or people who have a network of schools, and then they'd probably propagate it, and then you would again, but you end delivery will be done again by
That's true,
your team
yeah.
to the
That's true, yeah,
teachers.
because that's the way that we believe we can retain our quality. That's very important. And
Right.
that's the way that we have been able to maintain our quality so far also. So because some of our customers have been with us for about 8 years and 10 years, so that's one of the things that we have been able to do it, yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then again, the end delivery is to the teachers, and then further the teachers will
That's true.
take it to
Because
the
a teacher is
kids.
a change
So
agent.
that
Yeah,
is
the
where your
teacher is
end
a
delivery
change
stops.
agent.
You
You
train
touch
them.
a teacher, you're able to
Yeah.
influence a teacher. It is not that cohort of children. The cohort after cohort after
Right.
cohort is basically getting impacted. So teachers are
Right.
force multipliers. I think we have to accept that. And that's why we wanted to work only with directly with
Yeah.
teachers and not with students, because students, yeah, they will learn and go away, but the impact that you would want to envisage, the number of children whom you can influence, is much more higher if you work it through teachers.
Got it. Got it, ma'am. And you also mentioned a while ago that you're looking for collaborators. You'd like people to come and then act as the distributors, right? Now, let's say if somebody is watching, listening to this, and then they're interested. Like, what are the kind of people that you're willing to work? What are the conditions that they need to meet to be able to collaborate with you?
So first and foremost, they need to believe in the fact that this is important. No, it is not just another revenue generating stream, but if you are not convinced that this is the way
Right.
to do it, then there is no point in it. Then you would come back and say whatever you have to say. So our approach always has been
Right.
somebody who believes in it, and someone who works with the same target audience that we are working with. They could be doing other activities like, let's say, a
Right.
math. They could be doing other activities like a science or a sport with the same audience, with the budget private schools. And we would like to work with them because they already have gotten a breakthrough in
Right.
the school, and they can add it as another feature from themselves, and hence we can also go and work with them. That's one collaboration that we would like to do this. The second collaboration is someone who works with teachers.
Right.
Like, one is working with schools, the other one is somebody is working with teachers.
Right.
So with teachers, we would actually give them additional input, especially teachers in kindergarten to upper primary to about primary grades. If there's anyone who's working with this particular target audience, the teachers who are teaching in these grades, then we would like to empower the teachers with additional
Right.
skills and tell them why they have to do this. For instance, English, it is not the English teacher's job alone to teach English. My strong belief is that, because in an English medium classroom, every teacher who enters the class have to become a teacher, right? They can't say if a teacher, if a child were to
Right.
were to talk in a grammatically incorrect way, every teacher must be able to correct the child, and hence the children will not look at it as a subject but as a language. That's the approach that we want to bring in. English is not a subject but it is a language, and hence it impacts all the aspects of your life. So even in a sports ground, the sports teacher must be able to
Right.
correct the child, saying, hey, you're not speaking correctly and this is the way to do this. And that's why we say anyone who's working with the target audience, either with schools or with teachers cohort, is someone whom we would love to collaborate with.
Got it. Got it. Ma'am, another aspect that I'd like to touch upon, about Chipper Sage is we spoke about your go-to market. We spoke about the challenges. We spoke about your product and the evolution of it, and the importance of reading itself. Now, talking about the company, Chipper Sage, right? You've built it over a period of a decade, a little more than a decade now. You started off as a one man army, solopreneur, and then now you have a team. So, how is the team building process? And what are the lessons that you learned? And then what is the structure right now?
Okay, so when you start off, you need to have like-minded individuals. My submission to whoever is listening to
Right,
this is like, if you want to look at a co-founder, look at somebody who can complement your skills, right? And I'm sure it is already being spoken out in the
right,
in the domain, and especially in entrepreneurship, two people, when they come together, they should have complementing skills. But what happens if that isn't the case is that they would be severely lacking in one area and stepping on each other's toes in another area. That is important. The second one also is that, which I have learned the very hard way, is that people should not be in the same life stage. When I say, they should not be in the same life stages. If there are people, the two co-founders are just starting out, and and one of them, let us say, has got children in let us say middle school or in high school, the ability to spend time on the business is far more limited than someone who's just starting out. So you need to have a good combination of these things, because if in case if I have to step backward because I need to help my child during his board exams, there should be somebody who should be able to step up and fill my shoes during that duration of time. But if both are in a similar life stage, that becomes a challenge, right? The third one is not just life stage but also
right,
financial stage as well. Like, if there is a young co-founder or young founding team who wants to become secure financially, and there is somebody else who's already financially secure, the kind of decisions that they would make would be very, very different. So you need to look at these things and ensure that
right.
the team that's the top understands and appreciates, or if otherwise they will be dealing with too many elephants in the room. And that's very important, and I have learned it the very hard way. We have had people
Right.
who said, this doesn't excite me anymore. Because there are some people who think entrepreneurship is a very romantic area. They come in just because it's a startup, just because it's a startup in a well established incubator, and then that they would join, and very soon they find out reading doesn't excite them, helping others read doesn't excite them, and they are looking at no,
Right.
and they're looking at a very different kind of a thing, and they're talking to schools, talking to teachers who are at a different socio-economic space doesn't excite them. Then you're in the wrong space, which is what I have learned the wrong way. Sorry, the hard way. And I have also understood
Hard way.
subsequently that you have to have people who think on the same lines, who can empathize like you, and hence you'll be able to influence them. So all these things are, but nothing is wrong or right. Like, if for a young entrepreneur, maybe being financially secure becomes more important, and they are looking for quick results. And when you're, especially in learning, you cannot promise the school quick results. And I believe in ethical selling. You can't tell the school in another 3 months all your children will be speaking fluent English. Wrong selling, completely wrong. But I have had people who have gone and said that as well, and hence when you have to course correct them when that happens, right? So the language, people have different expectations, so you have to do ethical selling. You need to be, in life stages where you can complement each other, skills where you can complement each other. All this becomes important in your team, and that's very critical, especially for first time entrepreneurs.
Got it. And how many co-founders you have now, ma'am?
See, I had two serious co-founders, but both of them sort of moved away, I would say. Right now, if you say, yeah, as in terms of directors, yeah, we have to have, as per the legal rules, I had two directors. But otherwise, I had two co-founders.
Yeah,
Both of them moved away at
yeah,
some point. Some point, yeah, because of this, whatever reasons that I mentioned. With it, either the job didn't excite them,
right,
or
yeah,
the life stage that they were in didn't didn't allow them to continue, and they had to go back to a secure job. Entrepreneurship, like, you have these ups and downs. It is and you need to have, if you
right,
have an EMI to pay for your house, then maybe this is not the right place to be in, at least in the beginning.
right, right, exactly. And what is your team
We are a
size
team
now,
of
ma'am?
8 people. We moved. We have done a long way from, from 3 to 15 to 60, and then we rolled back. So, see, the other thing being an entrepreneur is you also need to respond to macroeconomic situations. So, when the moment demonetization happened, we
Right,
had to change our business model. I'll tell you why. Because most of the budget private schools that we worked with, the parents would pay the school fees in cash,
right,
and more often than not, we used
right.
to get cash, as the payment would be in cash. So when demonetization happened, we took a
Hmm.
massive hit because the parents weren't able to pay the school, and the school was defaulting on our payments, right? They were delaying our
Right,
payments. So we ended up in a situation where there was a cash
right,
crunch, and hence we changed the business
right,
model. Earlier there were schools which used to say, please send your teachers to teach English, right, to help teach reading, writing. So we could, our
right.
own teachers aren't equipped to do this, so you send it. So we had a team of about 60 people at one place, where we used to send teachers to various schools. They would go in and teach these kids. So
Right,
post demonetization, we were forced to pull back,
right,
and then we had this GST impact coming in.
right,
Earlier, we had a GST of 12%.
right,
Then, because of services, we moved to 18%. Our margins aren't that heavy. So, we pulled
right.
back most of the services. And right now, we only do products. We have a product called Flow of English. We help implement it in the schools. We train the teachers. We no longer send teachers to schools. That's not a viable model anymore.
Teachers. Got it.
So, right now, we are a team of 8,
Got it.
and that's enough for us for now, for this, because we are now still recovering, or what should I say, from the pandemic induced slowdown, business slowdown. So this year has been the first year. Maybe next year will be better than this year. That's how we are looking at it.
Got it. Got it. I was about to address, because you spoke about how demonetization affected you, and then the GST. I was going to ask you how the lockdown impacted,
Significant. The impact was very
and
significant, because I think the lockdown came up sometime
right,
in March 2020. We get a lot of our payments
right.
in March, right? Because of the way the schools pay. They pay in 3 installments. The
Wow.
last
Right,
payment would be
right.
in March. And because of this sudden lockdown, the
March.
schools lost out on collecting fee, because we work with budget private schools. Remember, I told you. And schools reneged on
Yes,
the
yes,
payment.
yes.
They did not pay us the last bit of invoice that had to be paid. And for 2 years, the
Right,
schools that we were working with were only struggling with how do they reach the kids. Forget about helping them enhance the language, because they were not even in the frame. So we had to reinvent ourselves, which is why we went and started directly talking to parents and children, parents who could afford to send their kids, have private language classes for their kids. So that's what we're working with, B2C. And now we are in a state,
right.
we are working in both case, but maybe we'll go back to B2B. We don't want to be in B2C. That's not doesn't interest us right now. We probably B2B is good, where we can impact more number of students with the same kind of effort.
But you
We
tried
did try.
B2C.
The last 2 years we have been surviving only because of B2C. We went back, so we put our content on the net, on the cloud, and then we are being able to reach across to parents. That is possible. We have been doing it, and parents have been our sales team, because they have gotten more number of students for us.
So you were talking about how you're going to stick to B2B, and then you're not going to go to B2C, but you did
That's
try
true. Yeah.
B2C.
That's the way that we survived during the pandemic. We reached across to parents who could afford private language lessons for their students, for the children, and hence we did conduct
Right.
this. And parents became our ambassador. They were able to bring in more people. So all that worked, and we survived well. But we would love to continue the B2B way, because we could have more number of impact more number of children, or with the same effort. And B2C is not, and it's not an easy thing, because if we go by every individual child, it's nice, but for the effort to impact, it's much less. It's like 1 to 1 or 1 to maybe 5 or 6, versus one, if you influence one teacher, you can influence hundreds of students. So that's what we want to do.
From a scalability perspective, you'd
Yeah.
like to stick to B2B. Um, Ma'am, one final aspect I'd like to talk about, Chipper Sage. Your business model or your go to market is mainly through you need to go to schools, and then that's how you reach out. So you said the challenges that you faced also going to different classes of schools, schools that would accept, schools that would not accept, and stuff like that. And then you identified, okay, private budget schools are the way to go. Now, what is your business development process, your sales and marketing and all those things, especially when it comes to a lot of businesses out there, a lot of entrepreneurs out there, deal with schools. So how have you cracked this model of, approaching schools? Who are the right people to go to in the schools? What is the culture like in these schools?
So they, one of the say the thing is, when we go to schools, we have the symptom. I told you the symptoms, right? So when schools accept the problem exists, it becomes
Right,
easier to sell to the schools, right? But most of the budget private schools, the
right,
decision makers are not the principals, but more often than not, they are the owners of the school, if I could use it, the promoters of the school, right? So they are the people whom
right.
we would need to work out with, because they control the budget. And the way we reach across
Hmm.
to this is a
Hmm.
number, is the networking I was speaking to you about. It's working with other
Right,
parties who work with the same kind of audience. So, and hence we are able to reach across to them. It could be
right,
people who give could be, I would say, the uniforms, or science based solutions, or coding solutions, or whatever it is, right? So
right,
we work
right, right,
alongside with them, and we work, and we have a collaboration, and then we go reach across to that. The third one that I am exploring right now and has worked for certain results is joining formal networking groups. Like, I have a part of an organization called BNI. There are a couple of similar kind of networking things, like, which only for the educational groups that are there. So when you work with these kind of networking groups, it's not a cold call that you make, but it is a warm referral which actually they do
right,
it. And the person who's referring already checks out whether they are
right,
interested in that. And that's how we work. And the fourth way
right.
that we have done is, if a principal of a school leaves and joins another school, then they're also able to take a product to the other schools as well. So it's a combination of things. It's not just one. But as entrepreneurs, as I said, you should be open to possibilities, and you should also be open to the possibility that somebody else could also come in and take away your share. That is also possible. But you should be open to all these possibilities and move forward.
Got it. Got it, ma'am. Great. It's interesting that you also touched upon organized networking groups like BNI and all those things, which is which shows that networking is not just about random stuff and then going to events and stuff like that. When you talk about these organized networking groups like BNI, it shows how important networking is. Basically, uh, with intent, meeting people to get business is also very important, and not leaving it to chance. Okay, I met somebody, they just happen to know. So I think that's a great thing. I was going to ask you if you're part of some. So apart from BNI, are you also part of many other networking groups, or how did you end up choosing
I'm a
BNI?
part of three or four. No,
Because there are
I'm
a
a
lot of
part of
others
three or
similar
four
to
different networking groups, and then one of them is similar to
similar to
BNI,
BNI.
and all of them we go with the intent of giving. Like, when you say, okay, I know these people, I can help them, connect
Right, right,
them with you,
right,
connect you to them, and in a no, in as a reciprocal thing, if you can also do the same thing, it will be good. So there is another group called IIEM, which is only about education management, where we work only with schools. A number of Sahodaya schools come under that. They have contact with Sahodaya schools. So when you're a part of that, then you get connected with that as well, right? So and there's one more thing called Education Not, which works only with children of sorry, only with education associated allied services. So when you work with them, then that also works. So you need to be connected with teachers groups, like teacherism, for instance. Like, you also work with a number of schools, right? You work with a number of educational people who work with
right.
this kind of thing. So these are the kind of people that we work with, and it's almost like, I will connect you, I will help you. In turn, I will, someone else will help you, or you will in turn be inspired to help me as well. So that's how it works. It is always give and take. Doing business, being out there, being an entrepreneur is all about give and take, and that's very important to learn much upfront. It's not always taking, it's not always receiving help. It's also giving help to the extent that you can. So I have done a lot of free webinars for teachers groups, to group of schools, like private schools associations would come up and say, would you speak about this to our teachers, would you train teachers on communication skills? I've done all of that, and not exactly to get business from those teachers, but to be able to know that they know an organization called Chipper Sage, and the Chipper Sage can help their schools in this way. So you need to be seen in the right forums, you especially in the forums where you think decision makers are participating, and that's how we have grown our business.
Got it, ma'am. And finally, Chipper Stage as an organization, are you, hiring? Are you looking for people?
We would always hire people with the right mindset. That's very important. And of late, given
Okay,
given the slowdown, or people are they say education is recession free, they say that, but what happens is, I'm talking of a very old fashioned idea called reading, and that competes with the same time space, money space, the rupees, the same rupees being them, people are looking for it from robotics, from space technologies, from design thinking, you name it. Everyone is coming into schools these days, right? So we will look at
right.
people, and we're taking a lot of people on contract, so that they understand us and we understand them before we take them permanently on a payroll. That's the model that we're adopting post the pandemic, because pandemic has taught us a lot of things. When you have an employee
Got
on
it,
roll,
ma'am.
you have a lot more responsibility towards them, and that's and
Yeah.
as someone who's the head of a company, you have to be careful about whom you bring on board, what promises you make for them, and how do they see their career in your organization, and that's critical.
And are there any specific positions you're looking for?
We would always look for people who would love to deliver content to teachers, who can actually train teachers, master trainers. We always are looking out for good master trainers. It goes without saying, because that we have a product which is fairly working, which is working quite well, and we would want right now, we are
Right,
also, apart from reading, we are also moving into an area called speaking, right? Public speaking, ability to put your thoughts across in a structured manner. So that public speaking of late has
right,
become a very important thing in our curricula and the services that we offer to schools. And the third one that we are right now looking at is creative
right,
writing, because with NEP coming in, students have to start expressing themselves very lucidly, very creatively, in their in for various subjects, and for them they should be able to write well. So along with reading, we are also now focusing on public speaking and creative writing. And any master trainer, anyone who can train these trainers, anyone with good language skills, with an interest to work with children, are most welcome.
great. Okay, ma'am. Fine. Ma'am, I saw that, Chipper Sage, you're in your 15th year, you've completed 14 years. And then, I also see that you run another organization called Mindful
Yeah.
Talk. Am I correct? So what is Mindful Talk all about? Would you like to talk a little about Mindful Talk?
Right. So here is when I said, no, as pandemic, you have to reinvent as as an entrepreneur. If you have a company, when you see a
Right,
setback, you have to keep reinventing them yourselves. So during the pandemic, we also
right,
realized that the IT was on the boom. If you actually realize it, and earlier we were teaching communication skills to
right,
students and teachers. Now we moved the same thing to IT
right.
professionals, and professionals from any domain. It
Okay,
doesn't really matter to us, as long as they want to communicate well.
right,
That's so mindful talking works with professionals across domains, uh, helping them with
right.
skills so that they can help their company and their career move forward. That's what we work with. So it's all about communication coaching. It's all about the ability to think out of the box. It's all about helping teams come together, design solutions for their workplace, and be able to tell their stories coherently, cogently to the audience. And that's what we help companies and organizations do.
Got it. And is this a solopreneur venture of yours, or do you have a team? And is it the
Actually,
same team as Chipper
that
Sage?
team, see, my our the team that we have right now is again people with similar backgrounds, like people who have been in IT for a long time, or people who have been in the corporate world for a long time, but
Right,
after some time they also wanted to try
right,
something different, right? So we have a very fluid team who is able to move between schools and organizations very easily and with very little effort. So, and that's what has been, and it has been going very well, I should say. I thank the universe for that. Both
mindful talk,
mindful
is it?
talking and chipper says we have been able to, very easily, fluidly, the team actually moves back and forth. We don't have any challenge there. Yeah.
Right, right,
Because we have got a set
got it.
of
How's
passionate
the
individuals. All of us are quite passionate in what we do. And hence, any challenges that come along the way, we take it in our stride. We
right?
are able to work around solutions for that.
Got it. How's the business development or sales aspect of mindful talk going in comparison with Chipper Sage? How is it different from this? Has there been a learning curve for that? Did it take some time for you to crack, or are you still cracking the model for
See,
that?
the cracking the model, for instance, they find, as long as the solution that you offer solves a problem for the customer, the communication still is the same, and I
Right,
still adopt the same approach, right? So when we go to an organization, what is
right,
the problem an IT organization typically feels right now, faces right now? Because I've been in IT for 20 years. You have a programmer
right,
who now has to move into a role of a project lead or a project manager. So he or she may be very good
right,
technically, can write code at like no one's business. But when it comes to communicating with the customer,
right,
be able to inspire the team to follow him or her, they would need to have certain skills. Otherwise, what happens in every meeting with the customer, he or her manager has to sit along with the person, and hence the manager's job is not being done,
right,
and everybody is upset in the whole process. So we help these IT
right.
professionals improve their communication skills in terms of reading, in terms of writing, in terms of speaking. We do the same thing, but just across the audience is different. That's about it. Because even for an IT professional, the ability to read the requirements doc, I'm sure you understand the requirements doc in a IT situation, the ability to
Yeah, yeah,
ask questions to their customer in a manner that they are able to give
yeah.
answer them, so that they can create the software to be able to ask probing questions, to be able to gather the recommend. That is an important skill that many people need to have. And when they don't understand, or when they don't agree with certain things, the ability to speak up and give reasons to why they are thinking the way they are thinking is also important. So good articulation comes with good language skills, irrespective of whichever background that you are, irrespective of whichever kind of a domain or industry that you work with. And hence we've been able to seamlessly move forward our skills, our people across to the industry as well. So in terms of marketing and thing, we
Got it.
still work the similar networking. So instead of working with what- networking thing,
Networking
we
and
actually
reference,
work
right?
with a lot of incubators now. While BNI is common for both, we work with a lot of
Hmm.
incubators, especially with startups, helping them tell the stories better, helping them with their
Right,
requirements better. So that's what we work. So it's just that networking, collaboration, communication skills are the same. Doesn't matter where you are. It is just that how you deploy it and which
right.
kind of teams that you work with changes.
Got it, ma'am. So you don't take the approach of cold outreach to organizations as far as the mindful talk
Not
company is
yet.
concerned.
I'm still
You
going the
don't do cold
referral way.
outreach.
Though we do a bit of email marketing, we still are going the referral way, because for us, we are still a smaller team. We need to grow that business, and we have pivoted an year and a half, about 18 months ago. We pivoted. Sometime mid 2021, we pivoted. So pivoted in the sense, I'm saying we are working on a mindful talking, but one part of the organization is also working with corporates. So having said that, we are right now looking at working with these referral bodies to generate business for us, and that has been going very well. And hence, I don't see at this point in time, I don't see a reason to have a full-fledged business team, because we have other teams at our disposal, and we work collaboratively with them. So we work with companies that do technical training, and hence we can go in and do the communication training. And I also have, having been in the industry for 20 years, I have enough people who are at decision making ability, so I can reach out to them directly. So all of that is also there. Yeah.
Got it, ma'am. Ma'am, just a couple of closing topics. We whatever we've spoken so far has been, very generally for any entrepreneurs, right? But I'd like you to, address especially, women entrepreneurs out there who might be listening, not to just as an extra enabler, or if there is something that's already being missing, or if you feel that what, it doesn't even matter, that we'll have to discuss it separately also, that's fine for an answer. But are there uh, any things that are offered? It could be from the government's perspective, or it could be from a lot of other organizations, who are championing the women entrepreneurship. Is there anything that you think people out in the open might be missing? If there's anything that you'd like to add to them, point to them, direct them, what, these are the things that are happening, make use of these things. From that perspective, that's one thing. And then, generally, what is it that you'd like to tell the women entrepreneurs out there, from the position that you are in?
So there are a lot of initiatives that the government has done, and I may not be the
Right,
right person because I have not really explored the options from the government. However, IIM
right,
Bangalore has got, after I graduated, has got a special program along with Goldman Sachs for women entrepreneurs. I'm also a graduate of that program where they specifically focus on women entrepreneurs, helping them to scale up their business, right? So that they actually do. So there are programs out there,
right,
and I also know a couple of other incubators which focus specifically on women to help them grow, which help them set up a formal thing about their business. That's one thing. But what do I want women entrepreneurs to understand? Very importantly, they have to go out and network, which I see not just women entrepreneurs, even women professionals miss out on. And for me, there has been a singularly biggest
right,
learning from entrepreneurship is that uh, uh, while at work, a lot of women, when they transition into, let us say, to motherhood and going forward, many of them look at completing the work and then leaving work and reaching home to be for their families, and they leave, and it is at their, when they are in a position of growth in their organization, they are not really thinking of networking. They are not thinking of going out to these seminars, to these conferences where they would be seen, and they would be invited over as a speaker, as a part, as a part of a participating team. And my submission is people need to
right.
really focus on those things, and they need to be seen at certain places so that people would take them seriously, that they are as professionals and not otherwise. And that's, I would we would really really coach people to say, go out and do this. The third thing which many women forget is asking for help, right? Asking for support. And it's important that women reach out to
Right.
mentors within the organization outside, whom they think they can help, who can, from where they can get help, and reach out to these individuals, reach out to these people and say, look, I need help, can you support me? More often than not, if you don't ask, the answer is already a no. So if you ask, that there's a 50% probability the answer could be yes, and you get your, exactly.
50% chance.
That
Yeah.
is something I would ask these young women who are out there to go out and ask for help. It doesn't matter. It does not show that you are weak. It just shows you're more courageous. It just shows that you're interested in doing what you're doing. It shows that your strength as a professional and not otherwise. Once again, a learning from the real world. That's what I have. That's what I would say. And I would also ask these people to join business. What should I say? Industry bodies like a CII. It could be NASCOM. They need to be seen in the right places, just like how other people are, so that they would be taken seriously. Yeah,
Right.
they need to go out and do that. And there are enough there
Great,
are
ma'am. Right.
mm, enough what do you call options from the government, but I have not really explored them because I tried a couple of times and it was too tedious, and I didn't have enough bandwidth, so I dropped it. But I am also aware of people who have used them as well. And women support
Right.
groups are very good because you can just need to ask them and you get a lot of support. So the support groups are very important. Support, go out and network, be seen in the right places at the right time, and ask for help if you need. These are the three things I would help ask the women entrepreneurs out there to remember and to follow it through.
Right. Great. And one final question. Having been a, be having read a lot of books, I do not, I'll rather, usually I ask is what are the three books that has impacted. But, you might have read a lot of books. I would probably ask you from a recency perspective, what are the three recent books that you read stood out for you and that you'd recommend the listeners also to give it a
Okay,
check?
so the one book that made a big, huge impact in my life about, I should say, 20 years ago was this book called Who Will Cry When You Die by Robin Sharma. I still recall that book because
Oh,
it
wow.
talks about how many of us don't take risks in our lives and hence lose out a lot of
Right,
opportunities subsequently, right? So for me, that has been a book that made me think I should get out of my safety net of saying, okay, look, I'm a corporate professional and I'm getting a good salary, and then I'm doing well whatever I'm doing. But is that what all you want to do in life, right? So sometimes that makes you. There are certain books that make you sit up and remember and take notice. And for me, that was the book that made a big impact in my life. I would say this, and I think I read this in around 2005. And the decision subsequently I have taken has been from the point of, is this right for me, not in terms of finance but in terms of as a growth as an individual, as a human being. Is this what? And that book has been a big
right,
catalyst in my journey, I would say that. The other, I read a lot, and a lot of other books is inner uh, strength for busy women. I don't remember the author's name, but it is about women who can become strong by looking inwards, by drawing on their own strengths, right? And this would mean, if you need to
right,
first respect yourself. You need to first have self love before you can give it to other people. You can only give what you have and not otherwise. And that is, for me, that has been a learning. A lot of times in Indian situation, you the women is expected to take a little bit of a back seat whenever any situation in the house that has to happen. And that, in my life, it caused an amount of resentment, but this book actually helped me get out of it. Let's say, just because you're doing certain things doesn't mean you're any less, and you need to love yourself first and foremost, respect yourself, what you're doing, and only then others will look at you in a similar manner. And for me, that book was very powerful in that method. The third one is The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joe Murphy. I do not know if you have heard of this. It's a beautiful book. If you have not, please
yeah,
do read it. The book actually tells us how our thoughts become our reality, and more often than
right,
not, we should never doubt our ability to achieve it. The moment, and if we they what they say, right? If your mind can conceive it and your heart can believe it, you can actually hold it in your hand. And for me, that book also has helped me do that. It says, if I can think of something and if I believe in it 100%, I'll be able to achieve it. And of whatever has happened recently has happened based on that belief. And I strongly believe in that. These are three books, significant impact. But the first one is something which made me come out of my comfort zone of working in a corporate. So that, for me, that was book was very, very interesting, because I was doing very well. The office was closer home,
right.
but to make that leap into a thing, into the unknown, working long hours, going somewhere else, all that actually came as a result of reading that first book. And for me, I'll still consider that book as the biggest turning point in my life.
Right, man. I already have a bunch of people that I'd want to share these books to, especially the first one, Who Will Cry When You Die. Even I want to read that. It's very interesting. And the second book you said was How
The
to Draw
Inner
Inner
Peace
Strength for
for
Working Women.
Busy Women. I would
Uh,
have to look up that author. It's a very complicated name.
oh,
Inner Peace
sorry,
for Busy Women.
Inner Peace.
It was again a
No, I think this title should
yeah,
help.
and it's a very interesting book. It is, because women don't, a lot of times we don't appreciate ourselves now, what we are doing as in women, right? We actually look at it now saying, okay, that person is better than me, and we always keep comparing, and we don't really appreciate. And that book actually said, no, you have to first appreciate yourself. You have to practice self-love before you can think you can love others. You can give only what you have. If you don't have it, then you can't give it to others. And that was a good
Right,
thought. It never occurred to me. We never discussed that in our circles, and that was a good book to read.
great. And the third one was The Power of the
Yeah.
Subconscious Mind. Great, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, taking your valuable time out. It is, as I said, it's been a very, very eye-opening couple of hours for me. I'm gonna definitely look into reading, and I'm gonna try and evangelize as much as possible for people to focus on reading. And it's equally important as so many other things that people focus on today, because I think this is far more fundamental than a lot of things that we are doing now. So thank you so much, and it was a pleasure having you.